To be back. I didn't expect to be coming back so soon after the last live stream. So what we're going to do is we're going to review the video from the last time, at least the key elements, and we're going to show that we actually have solid evidence to prove the case. And this is exactly what we like to see. We have a hypothesis, we test it, and if we're on the right track, the hypothesis turns out to be backed up with actual evidence. So I'm super excited. I'm sure you are as well, that we actually found evidence. And the credit for all of this actually is Odin, who contacted me and said, "Hey, Mel, are you aware there is a manuscript that just confirms what AJ Juice has said?" So this is just amazing. I've been in contact with AJ Juice today. He's super excited. Hello to Father Brian. I just saw you there in the house. Very, very welcome. And hello to Century Sense. Hello to Kingdom Now Ministries and Alika and XYZ. I've lost my train of thought. It's great to see you all. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this. So Aziz, we saw that that in Surah 9:30, it's often translated as Ezra is the son of God, but that made no sense because Jews don't believe that Ezra is the son of God. So that was the starting point. Let's just review what we saw the last day, and we'll go from there. So we noted that Uzair is commonly mistranslated as Ezra in Surah 9:30, and this is a common way to hide over things. There's no justification for going from Uzair to Ezra. There's no connection. It's quite silly, but this is the sort of things that they do. And what we said is that what this coming from AJ Juice's paper, Iran's poisoned arrows. In Arabic, Uzair is there, Uzair, but if it was marked incorrectly, it can read Aziz, meaning beloved, holy, or praised. And as some have pointed out, also it can mean strong. It has that meaning as well. It's not exclusively meaning strong, which is a familiar term used in context in the appearance of the Messianic Mahmed. And hello to Grateful Christian. You made it live. Well done. Sorry for the short notice. I tend to do these things short notice. So if you do manage to be around for it, that's great. I should really give people warning. The Herodian clan of the Mohammedan chain appears to carry a similar meaning, at least since Joseph du Nuaz, you remember that, and the inscription with Mahmed, the praised one. So we have the possibility, according to Age's use, that the text saying Uzair is actually really Aziz, and with that letter, it can be Ra or Zay, depending on whether the dot is at the top. And literally, there's only two possibilities there, so it's an easy one to work out. Now, so this is it. You can see the top one there, Uzair, without the diacritical dot on the last letter, which is the letter to the far left. But if we put the dot on the top, Aziz, it has messianic significance, which completely fits with the context. If we just go back again, just to see the context there, you can see that the Jews say something is the son of Allah. We'll put actually Aziz now that we know it's Aziz, but the Jews say Aziz is the son of Allah, so Aziz is a messianic term, while the Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. Again, it's a messianic term. Now, something to bear in mind, you remember when the high priest spoke to Jesus, he said, are you the Messiah, the Son of God? Because Jews believed that the Messiah was the Son of God. And Jesus said, yes, and you will see the Son of Man come in on the clouds of heaven. Again, another messianic term. So there are lots of messianic terms for the Messiah. Now, back to this. So at this point, you could argue, okay, it's a nice idea by AJ Juice, but it's just conjecture. I'm sure there were probably plenty of Muslims in the chat from the last video said it's just conjecture. Where's the evidence? Where's the proof? We'll come to that now in a second. So we put Aziz in as a more meaningful alternative. It makes sense now in the context, considering Aziz essentially means the same thing as Mahmed, beloved, the praised one, etc. It also means the strong, which fits in nicely with the idea of Messiah as it happens. And then, see, we're waiting for the slides to load up here. It's a bit slow sometimes. So I get this wonderful message from Odin today. You can only imagine my excitement when I received this earlier on today. Odin says, I've just reviewed Manuscript Wettstein II, or Wettstein II, 1913, one of the oldest and most complete manuscripts containing approximately 85% of the Quran. Its dating is challenging due to extensive rewriting. You might be familiar with it. It's an invaluable resource that offers insights into the Quran's development. I'll be honest with you, I'm not that familiar with it. I don't think I've heard of it before. I'm not really looking much at manuscripts, so maybe this might be the start of delving more into manuscripts. And others are doing fantastic work in that area. I suppose I'm just following my own little track here. But he goes on to say, the manuscript includes very old folios, potentially from the late 7th century, based on the calligraphy style, and others written later resembling the Kufic script. Diacritical marks are inconsistently applied, which is no surprise there, often missing, with some added later, similarly for the vocalization marks. Now, I did suggest the last day that the missing diacritical mark was done intentionally. I suppose you could argue because the diacritical marks are being applied inconsistently that maybe it's an accident of history that it got removed. But just so interesting that the fact that it's missing serves Islam's interest when it's trying to hide the tracks of its Messianic origins now, particularly since, I suppose, since the 16th century in particular, they're trying to hide that Messianic story. It's all about Muhammad now. We don't want to hear anything about the idea that Muhammad has got to do with a belief that there was a Messiah in the 7th century. I'm just going to divert a little bit on this theme just for a moment or two, just to get the wider context. If we look at the history of Islam from the 7th century all the way through 8th century, 9th century, 10th century, you just literally look at every century and you see so many people referring to themselves as Ahmed, Muhammad, some are claiming to be the Mahdi. Why is that? Why is there such an obsession with that? Is it just because of the story of Muhammad, or is it because Islam is really a messianic cult? It's all about the expectation of the Messiah returning. And it's a little bit like the boy that cried wolf. They're constantly going, wolf, 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 or Mahmed, 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 And this is really the history. But okay, a little bit of diversion, back to the main point. So he gave us this manuscript, and let me just go on to the next slide so we can see what else he has to say. He says, interestingly, 930, Surah 930, appears in its most recent layers, folio 70V here, and exhibits a somewhat Kufi-like style with many diacritical marks, okay? So I took screenshots of that so you can see it. I will actually put the link that's given here in the description later after I finish this, so you can actually have a look for yourselves. Okay, so when you go into the website, you get all of this information about the document, and you can have a look at that in your own time. What interests us is this, okay? So what they have is the photo of the folio, and what's on the right is where they have noticed discrepancies, variants in the manuscript, which is color coded. So when you go onto the website, you'll see what the green and the blue and so forth is all about. I'm not focusing on that today. Let's go a little bit further. This is the bit that interests us. So in that yellow rectangle, we actually see Aziz. Now, it may not be obvious to you there, but if you look at the image to the right, there's a space between the as and ease. So you might actually think they're separate words, but it's the beginning and end of the word with the red dot marking the end of the word, if that makes sense. So Odin says the manuscript does not mention Uzair, but instead has an unequivocal Aziz with a dot on the final letter indicating a Z rather than a Ra. So that's the crucial thing. So AJ Juice is right. He postulated this possibility. He didn't know that there was a manuscript that proved this point. Here it is. That's the evidence. I should point out that AJ Juice is working on his paper now. He's updating it with this new finding, which I'm sure he's super excited about. It just proves the point. All right. Let's have a look at the next bit that Odin has to say. The Ya lacks the two dots underneath, but it's unmistakably a Ya, as the other Ya on the page also lack points beneath them. Okay. Now, in the context, it has to be a Ya. And the fact that they're missing the dots under the other Yas, it's just, it's fine. It is Aziz. There's no doubt about it. Okay. So this is phenomenal. Odin goes on to say that the Corpus Coranicum has acknowledged this discrepancy. Well, how can they not acknowledge the fact that this discrepancy? It'll be interesting to see their interpretation once they publish the critical edition of the Quran. They're supposed to. Why are they dragging their feet? There's probably a lot of work yet to do on that. But AJ Juice's theory is no longer just a theory. We now have very solid evidence, according to Odin, and I totally agree there with him. There's Odin. Un grand merci à Odin. Big thank you to Odin for supplying us with this invaluable evidence. This is super exciting. What we're reaching now is a point where we can prove that Mahmed is a title. It's a messianic title, and it's one of a number of messianic titles found in the Quran. We have Aziz now with that, and even though they have hidden it, whether intentionally or unintentionally, through the missing diacritical mark, we now have evidence that in the earlier manuscript they do have Aziz, and it's another word for Mahmed, another word for the Messiah. So if we look at that verse in Surah 9:30, what is it saying? It's saying the Jews say that Aziz is the Son of God, while the Christians say that the Messiah is the Son of God. So it's essentially the only difference between the Jews and the Christians here is they're just using a different term for the Messiah. Where does that leave Muhammad of the Hijaz? I think that throws it up in the air because according to the standard Islamic narrative, Muhammad is not meant to be the Messiah. He's meant to be a prophet, and maybe a very naughty boy if you look at the Hadiths, but he's meant to be a prophet of Allah. He's not meant to be a Messiah. And the fact that it's clear that Mahmed and Aziz are messianic titles kind of throws everything up in the air again. And it means we have to come up with an alternative narrative that unifies all of this evidence. So as Lloyd has said there, the sin is falling apart. This is the case. Now, what are Muslims going to do in response to this? They're probably going to go on this video and they're going to talk about anything other than the points in this video. They're going to talk about the Trinity or some other stuff that they always go back to whenever there's a problem in the standard Islamic narrative. Now, the other thing is Lloyd says, I'm going live in a few minutes on the line from Luther to Hitler and Luther's hatred of Jews. Sadly, our times overlap. Stop by the channel once Mel is done. Listen, I'm going to stop here and allow you to get over there. Unfortunately, I won't be joining you, Lloyd, but I will be watching. And All the best, everyone. Thanks for dropping by, and see you all very soon. Bye-bye.